All right, all right, all right. Good morning, YouTube. My name is Meteorologist Mike Linden. How are you? It is Sunday, September 1st, the start of meteorological fall. Can you believe it? Fall, at least meteorologically speaking, has arrived. September 1st, 2019, almost over. We are in Q4, folks. Isn't that amazing? Morning, Leslie. How are you? Joel, Solomon, good morning. I hope your morning is going well. Things are ramping up here in Dorian land. Just make sure this microphone is adjusted. Cool. My name is Meteorologist Mike Linden. I am a member of the My Radar team here in Orlando, Florida. Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson was in last night breaking down all things Dorian, but there have been some updates to go over overnight. I was live this morning on Facebook as well as on Twitter. You just saw the social media information before. Let me pull it back up again. There it is. So be sure to follow us on social media. That is the best way to get the most active and up-to-date information. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube. But let's get back into the forecast. What I'd like to do as part of these live chats here is go through the forecast as well as answer some of your questions. So if you have a question for me, pop it over in the comments. I have it open just off screen here. And even if you are watching this after the fact it has already been live, I can come back and answer your questions if need be. So let's take a look at Hurricane Dorian right now. Very close to making a landfall in the Bahamas. You can see it is just barreling westward. It is a much more, what's the word I'm looking for, symmetrical hurricane now, where you're seeing it relatively evening out on both sides of the eye. The eye wall is very, very defined. You have that just buzzsaw shape to it. You can see the outflow bands coming off of the back end there, just bubbling up some intense convection. And the latest from the National Hurricane Center as of 8 o'clock this morning is we are looking at the first Category 5 storm of the 2019 hurricane season, or Atlantic hurricane season, I should say. That would mean this is the fourth year in a row with the presence of a Category 5 storm. And based on the recent changes to this storm from the NHC, it is looking likely to follow a similar path to what Hurricane Matthew did in 2016, a Category 5 as well, and at least at its peak, we will see if it follows that path or not. So again, Hurricane Dorian right now off the eastern coast of Marsh Harbor there in the Bahamas. A lot of folks in the Bahamas bracing for the potential devastating impact of a storm of this size and of this strength, and especially so if it stalls out and begins to slow down a little bit. But you can now see a storm that was once relatively small, relatively compact, is still compact, but it is much larger now. We are looking at a much more significant hurricane. You can see as far as about as wide as it is, a good 215 or so miles wide. That eye, not very wide in and of itself. The eye, 15 or so miles. I'm not going to get the most accurate reading on here as it's moving, of course. But you can see that we are now staring down the barrel of this very dangerous storm as it's sitting just off the eastern coastline of the state of Florida. You can see over the past 24 hours on radar and satellite that on satellite imagery, the eye is well defined. It did not go away at all yesterday and has not, at least as we know, undergone any eye wall replacement, which could potentially lead to a bit of a weakening. But you can see the green there. That is the radar information from Florida, and it is now starting to show Dorian here on the radar loop. You can see it right there, just off the eastern coastline of the northwestern Bahamas. You can see what is the eye of Dorian. Now, A lot of the buzz that got going overnight and into this morning on social media had to do with a recon flight last night that clocked wind speed at 166 miles per hour for a period of 10 seconds. Now, of course, you need wind speeds you need wind speeds to be sustained for about 30 seconds in order to get that official sustaining number, the maximum sustained number, and that is what happened. 160 miles per hour, good enough for Category 5 hurricane status, which is 157 miles per hour and above. So as of what we know so far about Dorian, it is again at $160, which is insane. Category 5 storm moving west at 8 miles per hour. So for it being a big storm, it is moving very, very slowly. And again, it's very, very compact, very tightly wound, this storm. Now, expected to weaken a little bit to Category 4. I think that's the National Hurricane Center anticipating that as this thing works its way westward, it may start to undergo some of the more mature stage evolutions, that being that eye wall replacement, as we've talked about in the past. But as this storm approaches the coastline, it's expected to take a pretty sharp turn to the north and start to lose a little bit of steam to Category 3 status by Wednesday, Category 2 by Thursday, and so on and so forth. Now, there's something important here within this path here to not overlook, and while the red line is the official path from the National Hurricane Center right here, the cone of uncertainty, which is this white blob here, that does extend westward into covering a portion of the city of Orlando, covering Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Melbourne, Vero Beach, and southward into West Palm Beach. In fact, getting pretty close there to Miami. Tampa ruled out of the cone, as well as up near where Hurricane Michael hit. But nonetheless, the entire eastern coastline of Florida, at least for the most part, is under the gun here from a potential landfall situation. Same thing goes for southeastern Georgia, as well as South Carolina, as well as for the Wilmington, North Carolina area, which, of course, just got done with dealing with Hurricane Florence, or just got done. That was last year, I believe. Hurricane Florence bringing with it tons and tons and tons of rain, as well as the storm surge inundation. So not exactly what the folks in North Carolina are, I'm sure, hoping for at this stage. Now, we are now dealing with a new warning to pass along to you. That's right here. Can you see this dark purple color over West Palm Beach, the Vero Beach area? This is a tropical storm warning. The yellow here, a tropical storm watch, and this pinkish purple down here is a hurricane watch, but this red right here for the Bahamas, that is a hurricane warning. And then right here on the coastline of Florida for West Palm Beach, Vero Beach area, is a tropical storm warning. The difference between a watch and a warning: a watch, if you think about it in terms of, let's just say, baking a cake, a watch means you've got your flour, your baking soda, your oil, your eggs, you got it all ready to go. All of your individual ingredients are ready to be used. A warning means the cake is done. The cake is baked, it's over. Warning is imminent, very, very imminent. And as you can see, for the folks in the Bahamas, if they do not have their hurricane plan now, it very likely could be too late, as they are already, at this point, very much so likely feeling tropical storm force winds, let alone the hurricane force winds surrounding the eye of the storm. So this wind forecast is simply going to show you that even without a landfall situation, it's still going to be very rough and very windy for the Atlantic coastal region of the state of Florida, especially near Cape Canaveral, as this model is picking up on, with wind speeds from Vero Beach and Palm Bay there up near 49-50 miles per hour. And bear in mind, that's just model guidance. We very likely could be looking at even stronger wind speeds as this thing approaches very slowly, might I add. Heading into the latter portion of the forecast into Wednesday afternoon, you can start to see the winds beginning to calm down over southern Florida as this storm works its way northward. At this point, the event will be winding down for Orlando and, again, central and southern Florida, but it's just beginning for the Jacksonville area, southeastern Georgia, as well as South Carolina at this point as Dorian works its way northward. Let me pop over and check out the comments real quick before we move forward here, because I'm going to get into some deeper science stuff here in the steering currents. I think that's super important to talk about. Let me see some of the comments. What do we got here? Leslie from Kissimmee, what's going on? Timothy from Savannah, Georgia. Henry from Naples. Good news, Henry. Naples likely not to take much of an impact from this thing. So it might be a little windy, maybe a little breezy near you, but I think it's at this point safe to say that Naples is looking a lot better than spots like Vero Beach. What else we got? F to Florida. Shout out to Face Monkey. Solomon, yep, it is a Category 5. Roger Rabbit, good morning. Port Charlotte. Kendall, Florida, what's going on? Southeastern Michigan. What's up, Solomon? Go Big Blue. Looks like a cake I don't want a slice of. Yeah, no kidding. Alexis in Titusville. Well, Alexis, we are going to be talking a bit about Titusville here in just a moment, as we kind of already have with the Orlando area in Central Florida. So let's talk about steering currents here for a second, folks. When we talk about steering currents, what we're really talking about is how this storm is going to move over the next couple of days here. And there's a couple factors at play. So I hope that you're going to be able to follow along with me here. If at any point this gets confusing, if I'm making silly analogies, please let me know. I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. That way you can impress all your friends and tell them what you know is going on. So let's begin. High pressure to the northeast of us. You can see this big ridge of high pressure there. Well, it is rotating clockwise as high pressure tends to do. You may also hear people saying this ridge of high pressure to the east. And simply what that means is it's still high pressure, but essentially the shape is something like this. It's an upside down U, right? And that would follow with the winds moving clockwise around that ridge. Now, a trough of low pressure is low pressure, and that is shaped like this. In fact, there is a trough coming in right now. You can see the direction in which those winds are moving, or the water vapor, I should say, over the central and high plains of the United States. So essentially what's going to happen here, this trough of low pressure is advancing eastward over the next 2 days, and that should work to begin to shove this ridge of high pressure away from the eastern coast of the United States. As that happens, remember, this is rotating clockwise. We've got another weaker ridge here over the Gulf of Mexico, also rotating clockwise. So right now, this ridge right here, that's what's called the Bermuda High. During the winter, it actually retreats up northward, but during the summer, it tends to lag a little bit and dives a bit deeper. That's where it is right now. But what's going to happen as that trough advances eastward, this high leaves this way. And remember, with that air rotating clockwise around it, and with this ridge here rotating, that's going to begin to grab Dorian over the next couple of days. It's going to slow down and stall as it kind of gets caught between that trough and that ridge. And what will happen, as that ridge begins to exit to the east, Dorian begins to turn. That is why you are seeing a lot of the NHC path starting to mirror exactly that. So it all really, I mean, there's a lot of things at play here, so I don't want to be as final as what I'm saying, but this ridge of high pressure, that's the name of the game here. It's ironic because a hurricane is a center of low pressure. So this high pressure here really going to prove to be the deciding factor as to when Dorian turns and where Dorian begins to turn. So pay attention to this ridge of high pressure if you are watching our coverage or anyone else's coverage for that matter. When you hear them talking about the Bermuda High or the ridge off the eastern coast of the U.S., you know that they are talking about steering currents. Very, very important stuff here. So as Dorian, again, works its way toward the coastline, even without a landfall situation, we could still be looking at a very, very dangerous situation when it comes to flooding, flash flooding, I should say, as well as the storm surge and the high wind gusts. With this model here, that would mean by Monday at 8 a.m., you're starting to feel those tropical storm force winds near Vero Beach, just to the north of Miami there near West Palm Beach. It begins to extend itself northward, heading into Tuesday morning and Tuesday evening up the eastern coastline of Florida toward toward Daytona Beach and Jacksonville. As we get into Tuesday evening and into Wednesday, those tropical storm force winds begin to work their way into the Charleston area of South Carolina and into Wilmington, North Carolina. And how about that? Late next week, depending on how close along the coastline Dorian hugs, we could be looking at some tropical storm force winds pushing into the Virginia area late next week. So how about that? Almost the nation's capital joining the party there. Now, the precipitation forecast has wavered a little bit over the past couple of days, but nonetheless, this would still result in a ton of rain, almost 7.5 inches of it for Vero Beach by Tuesday morning. Orlando already up near 3.5, and Jacksonville almost up at 4.5 inches of rain, not to mention the storm surge for these coastal areas too, guys. So that rain definitely beginning to pump itself up a little bit along the eastern coastline of Florida. I'm going to have to grab the graphic here. The numbers aren't appearing, but that would represent a ton of rain here, folks, potentially up near a foot locally for some of the spots there near Cape Canaveral and into the Jacksonville area. But notice up into North and South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, Columbia, picking up rain too. And Columbia is pretty far inland as well, I should add. But 9 inches of rain for both Myrtle Beach and Wilmington, let alone the beach erosion and the storm surge there. With a lot of people on vacation for Labor Day, it's not exactly a recipe for success, as one would say. Here's a look at the GFS and the European model, two of the benchmark models I'm sure you've heard a lot of meteorologists talking about over these past couple of days. So this is showing two outcomes, one from the Euro, one from the GFS. The GFS a little farther along here at this point in time and Thursday morning, with the European lagging behind a bit, but both models are starting to agree a little bit, which is interesting. We started to see this a little bit yesterday, that both of these model runs were starting to line up, and that is a good and a bad thing. Good in the sense that it really starts to verify what a lot of meteorologists are putting down as far as the forecast. Bad in a sense that this would represent a pretty rough run for a lot of people, let alone the eastern coast of Florida, let alone Georgia. But we're talking east coast of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and even Virginia, potentially all dealing with Dorian impact through the next week. So a very slow-moving storm before it begins to hustle late next week and out of here. Just because, mind you, it doesn't look like it is going to make landfall according to the NHC, a lot of the areas still under that cone are still dealing with the potential for a landfall. So don't just go, looking at a forecast like this and saying, oh, I live in, Port St. Lucie in Florida, I'm going to get all my boards down. I'm good. Hurricane's not coming here. You never want to take a chance, if you will, with an event like this. You always want to prepare, especially for how dangerous Dorian is. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. So again, Dorian is a very dangerous hurricane, a Category 5. That's as high as we can go, folks. Anything above 157 miles per hour is a Cat 5, and this thing's at 160 miles per hour right now. So if you have not already, Florida as well as the southeastern United States, we're looking at you, Georgia and South Carolina, and even North Carolina for that matter. It is Sunday. You have plenty of time until this thing is potentially up near you. We're talking Wednesday, Thursday, if that model run holds steady. So you need to get your hurricane plan done now, especially considering some stores that maybe were already planned on being closed for Labor Day are going to be closed tomorrow. So that leaves you with even less time. I know the situation is not ideal, but again, go out, get your water, your batteries, your flashlights, everything that you would need if you were to lose power for an extended period of time. Be sure that you have those supplies ready to go. So this is the last thing we're going to cover before I say goodbye, at least for now, is we're going to look at the categories, the Saffir-Simpson scale, I should say, starting with a Cat 1, 74 to 95 miles per hour. Not exactly as dangerous as the others, but still very dangerous, when you compare it to a Cat 5. Once we get into Cat 2 range, 96 to 110 miles per hour, we're talking about wind speeds that are easily capable of ripping, pieces of trees up, if not whole limbs of trees, and taking them airborne. Not to mention the shingles on older roofs could easily come off in an event like this. Once we get into Category 3, that is when we have entered major hurricane status, anything Category 3 and above, 111 miles per hour to 129 miles per hour. That is when you start seeing the NHC start to use wording such as devastating or even life-threatening for that matter. Once we get into Category 4, we enter the catastrophic territory where things can get real rough real fast. 130 miles per hour to 156 miles per hour. This is when even well-structured homes that even may be built to Miami-Dade standards after Hurricane Andrew in Florida, a lot of the coding changed, and even after Michael last year. Even with the upgraded building codes, you can still have damage to your home in a Category 4. To put it into perspective, even at a Category 3, Category 4 storm, it could take a piece of plywood, for example, and pick it up and throw it through concrete, through drywall. So a projectile can easily become a missile in that sense. Really scary stuff. That's why you don't want to be outside in this event, and B, you want to have that plan in place to hunker down from things like this. Because right now, not expected to make landfall as a Cat 5, but Dorian is a Cat 5. And for the folks in the Bahamas, this is the unfortunate reality that they are staring at in the face. Anything above 157 miles per hour is a Category 5. And again, as Dorian stands, it is at 160 miles per hour. That is enough for full-scale catastrophic damage. We're talking homes being legitimately ripped off of their foundations and tossed. Storm surge is just inundating. The heavy rains, the trees can get uprooted. Category 5, you saw what Hurricane Michael did to Florida last year. It's almost like hitting a reset button on a region. So whoever takes the blast of a Cat 5 head on, it's not likely to be very fun at all. So again, for the folks that live in the Bahamas, you if you are watching this, if you can hear me, please be safe. We are looking at a very dangerous situation unfolding for the Bahamas. And with the United States staring down the barrel of Dorian, it's still going to be rough even at a Cat 3 or even at a Cat 4. I'm going to bring the National Hurricane Center path up one more time here. Let me bring it back to here. And I'm going to answer some more questions before I say goodbye for now. What do we have? Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Shout out to Gatlinburg. I was actually, when I was still working in television in Kentucky, I actually covered the fires in Pigeon Forge. You want to talk about some visuals I won't ever forget that event. Man, crazy stuff. Hope you're doing all right. What else we got here? Joel in Melbourne asking about the dangers in Melbourne. So, Joel, I would continue to listen to and follow all official forecasts as well as the information from emergency personnel. I know that at least in the portions of Brevard County that are in low-lying areas, flood-prone areas, and coastal areas, there is a mandatory evacuation that went into effect 30 minutes ago. So I haven't heard of one yet in the Melbourne area. But it is certainly something to continue to pay attention to. What else we got here? Solomon saying that the spaghetti models look like pool noodles. Yeah, they kind of do. Henry asking, how often will you guys be giving reporting and vital if we lose power? Well, I appreciate it, Henry. The plan is to continue to give updates, these kind of updates on social media, that being Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, as well as in the app. If you haven't already, download the My Radar app, because if you do lose power and you still have cellular connection, you'll at least be able to continue to track the hurricane and watch our coverage. Once this thing gets closer to the coastline, I know we're going to kind of ramp up our coverage of it a bit. I know with Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, I know she's planning on being here with you guys for any potential landfall situation. So we are going to continue to keep you updated as often as we can with these live updates. So stay tuned, I should say. Once the next path comes down from the NHC at 11, I'll very likely be doing a live stream on Facebook, followed by Twitter, and followed by YouTube as well. What else we got? Bianca, what are the wind speeds in Miami? Couldn't tell you what they are right now, but as you can see on the track there, it would be Category 4 winds just to your north there. Miami looks like it could narrowly be missing this, which is a good thing. TNM Edits asking, do you think it goes up Florida near Jacksonville? Well, I would say that at least right now the National Hurricane Center track is taking it all the way up the coastline, much like Hurricane Matthew. Jacksonville most definitely in the cone of uncertainty there. So I would say don't hold your breath. There is still the possibility for that thing to nudge just a little bit more west, as we talked about with those steering currents. That ridge of high pressure to the northeast, you probably want that thing to start giving way here sooner rather than later. That way we can start to see Dorian start to turn northward. Ernesto asking, are we going to feel the impact of strong wind in Miami? I would say at this point likely not. It just, again, all depends on the turn. It really all depends on the turn. And it looks like NHC meteorologists are kind of buying what those models are selling, that turn is going to come here over the next 24 hours. What else we got? Timothy asking, could it move further to the west? Yes, that's most definitely a possibility. Again, with that cone of uncertainty, you can see that extends all the way inland into central, southern, and central Florida. So that is certainly something to continue to watch for today. We should know a little bit more coming up here at 11 o'clock when the next path drops. What else we got? SoFlo asked, what is going to make it turn instead of hitting us head on? Well, we talked about that already. So when this live stream is done, I suggest you go back and you watch the section on the steering currents, because that is when we discussed how it would be turning, that ridge of high pressure to the northeast. So I think that about does it. That about does it for the live stream. Let me pull up our social media one more time here, so that way you guys know where to go to follow us. That's our social media handles. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as right here on YouTube. If you are watching for the first time, of course, subscribe to the channel, and do not forget to click on that notification bell. That way you always know whenever we drop a new video. It looks like someone disliked the live stream. That's like our first dislike in a long time. So that's a bummer. But hey, thanks for the people that have liked the video. Really appreciate it. And again, while you're at it, be sure to subscribe and with notifications turned on. You can also follow us. Again on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. That is where you're going to continue to find updated information. Don't forget, you can also download the MyRadar app on the iOS platform, on the Google platform. I guess it's the App Store, Google Play, as well as Amazon Alexa. If you have an Echo Show, you can watch the radar there, which is neat. And you can also download MyRadar on Windows Phone. That does extend to PCs as well. The desktop version of the app is very cool, so I highly suggest you check it out. From all of us here in the MyRadar studios in Orlando, Florida, I have been meteorologist Mike Linden. Stay safe, and we will see you in the next update.